Yo, welcome back to the show, everybody. The Shanghai Pete broadcast, if you will. I'm your host, the People's Champion, and your good buddy in the mix, Shanghai Pete. I hope everyone was able to get through their work week without any egregious incidents of self-harm. I know I myself barely managed. But now it's Friday, work is over, and it's time for the show. So that's at least some bit of good news that we can all be happy about. Maybe smoke a victory blunt if that's your thing. One thing is for sure though, the games industry has been on their shit this week, and by that I mean stepping directly in it and tracking it all over the house like that awesome Calvin Hobbes strip from back in the day. Good God, we better get deep inside right away. Just time for a quick recap of the week, which was dominated by the ignominious death of Game Informer magazine.
Print is dead.
I know some of you may have mixed feelings about this because perhaps you had a subscription to it that some poor GameStop employee was forced to upsell your mom when they were buying you a copy of Halo 3 or something. Since I happened to be that GameStop employee for many years, I fucking hate Game Informer. Fuck Game Informer and fuck industry-supported mouthpiece rags like it. Fuck it to hell. That piece of shit magazine was always little more than a glorified special advertising section for GameStop. I don't care that it's dead. I don't care that it's been purged from GameStop's website. I'm glad it's gone. I hated it. Was I traumatized by my experience with it at GameStop? Perhaps. You be the judge. Either way, no matter what course my life takes, I know now that I will never have to try and sell anyone a subscription to Game Informer magazine ever again. And thank fucking God for that. On the other hand, it's likely a lot of people lost their jobs because of this, and well, nothing ruins a good time like finding out that other people got fucked over. Shit. Anyway, let's talk about something fun from this past week that came from QuakeCon. There's a new version of Classic Doom and Doom 2 on Steam, PSN, Xbox Store, and the Nintendo eShop. Oh yeah. Both games are included in that package, which costs only like $10 and have been updated to run on Night Dive's Kex engine, which was used in the recent remasters of Dark Forces, Doom 64, Quake 2. That means they've got native 16:9 support, 60 frames per second, and up to 120 in 4K on some hardware. Not only are they sporting a new soundtrack, but a brand new episode made by the exact guys you would put on a list of your favorites to do something like that if it were up to you. id Software, Machine Games, and Night Dive Studios. Holy shit, talk about a trifecta, bitch! And if that weren't sick enough, they also included the 2 episodes from Final Doom, the master levels for Doom 2 Collection, the John Romero episode Sigil, plus No Rest for the Living. An insanely awesome package for just $10 or free if you own the previous version. This is a great pickup for anyone that loves Doom, classic FPSs, or if you're just looking for something fun to play over the weekend, check it out. Alright, and now with the fun part of the broadcast behind us, for our main story tonight, I regret to inform you that it's time for another tough talk. Yeah, guys, it's not just Destiny 2, that's on its way out, it's Bungie as well. This is Bungie's anthem moment, I'm sorry to say. This is the beginning of the end, the story of the Death of Bungie. That being said, before we go any further, I must once again direct viewers to the holy book of nuance. Nuance for dummies, if you will. I know this is the internet, so that's largely an exercise in futility, but we always like to try anyway, don't we? Geez, because I'm predicting the death of Bungie in this video, that does not mean that's what I want to happen. I love Halo and Destiny like most people, though I do think the new iteration of Marathon looks like a pile of shit, but that's not the point. The point is that I think Bungie is a great dev, and the last thing I want is to see them gone. Just because we don't want something to happen doesn't mean it's not going to, though. The world is an unfair place, my G's. So, with that said, do I usually say let's get deep inside for a second time in the video? I don't know, but let's do it today. With that said, let's get deep inside the Death of Bungie. So let us start at the beginning. What the fuck is going on? Well, the short version is that Bungie was just hit by another round of massive layoffs and downsizing, prompting some longtime talent to call it quits and say fuck Sony, as well as causing a planned Destiny spin-off to be canceled, along with reports that they were going to, quote, step back from Destiny 2's big annual expansions. As a result, Destiny 2 and Bungie fans are both, well, they're panicking, and rightly so, I think. To find out the full story, though, we're going to have to roll back the clock quite a bit. Some of you may think this all began last fall, when Bungie announced they'd be stacking around 100 of their then 1,200 person workforce. You might think it began a few weeks ago, when their CEO's desperate and immediate need to purchase a bunch of psychotically expensive classic cars necessitated the further firing of over 200 people in order to bankroll. I mean, you'll know what it's like when you simply must have a 1971 $200,000 Porsche. We all do, everyone has a Porsche, right? Now, as vile and inexcusable as these layoffs are, however, our story actually begins a year or so prior to them with the event that would come to be understood as the genesis of not only the studio's projected future, but also all those mass layoffs. That's right, our tragic tale of the demise of Destiny and the studio who created it, Bungie, truly begins way back in 2022 when known supervillain Sony Interactive purchased the studio for a mere $3.6 billion. Chump change in the corpo world, right? Well, maybe not. Initially, when the acquisition was first announced, it didn't take long for Sony to come out and try to calm all the rightfully terrified Destiny and Bungie fans with some laughably transparent corpo speak comms guy bullshit. Near as I can tell, the majority of the media coverage that at the time was attempting to brush concern aside and provide evidence that everybody just needs to chill and that it'll all be fine stems entirely from this one quote by CEO Jim Ryan from an interview on GameIndustry.biz.
We had a strong partnership with Bungie since the inception of the Destiny franchise, and I couldn't be more thrilled to officially welcome the studio to the PlayStation family. Bungie will maintain its right and ability to self-publish, of course, and reach players wherever they choose to play.
Oh boy, nothing like a nebulous and intentionally vague quote from a fucking suit to calm the nerves, eh guys? Oh Jesus. We'll do a quick crash course in translating corpo speak here so that we can thoroughly dismantle this laughable premise. As is so common with these detached, disingenuous fucks, it is much more often how they say things, not what they're actually saying, that tells the story and where you'll find the actual meaning. Take a look at the phrase, Bungie will maintain its right and ability to self-publish and reach players wherever they choose to play. First, this tells us what their main concern is, or rather what they've interpreted or are guessing from their customer reaction is consumers' primary concern. That Destiny 2 players are worried that they're going to toss Destiny 2 behind a very PlayStation-shaped paywall and tell them all to get fucked. So they've headed that off with the definitely crafted on purpose language of wherever they choose to play. See, this is great because it avoids specifics or concrete promises while vaguely suggesting that the platform to publish on will remain in the hands of Bungie. So, guys, unless Bungie wants to take your Xbox game away, everything will be fine. Plays well, sure, it was designed to, but again, it very intentionally stopped short of actually, literally, and unambiguously saying, we won't pull PlayStation exclusivity on Destiny 2 or other future Bungie releases. A very intentional example of one of corporate America's, and I guess our government's also, if we're being real, favorite phrases or mantras or mottos, maybe. Say it with me, plausible deniability.
2 words, Mr. President. Plausible deniability.
So, effectively, they've promised nothing while providing not just cover for the corpo execs, but also a fun and pro-consumer sounding quote with which to fuel a few news cycles worth of positive press for both Bungie and Sony. This is Business Comms 101, guys, and it's the first sign of not only Sony's future intentions for Bungie, but also their ultimate fate. Think about it. There was nothing stopping them from saying more, saying things like, we pledge to support Bungie and their employees in all their future endeavors to the best of our ability, or Destiny 2 and its continued growth and dedication to its player base will not change under Sony. Or maybe, Bungie employees will be free from worrying about being adversely affected by changes largely out of their control, like corporate restructuring or mass layoffs. And on and on and on. They could have said any number of things like that, but they didn't. They didn't on purpose because they knew all those things were likely possibilities. Why? Because there are always possibilities in high-profile, huge dollar amount acquisitions like this. Now, maybe they were actually, at least so far as we can tell right now, sincere in their statement that they're not going to toss Destiny 2 behind PlayStation exclusivity, but, still kind of early in the cycle, right? Shit, you look at BioWare, the Embracer Group debacle, Blizzard after Activision. Girl, it's an old song, and we've heard it 1,000 times. We've heard it specifically with Bungie, actually, who have been fighting a protracted battle for independence ever since they first lost it all the way back in 2000 in the before times, when Microsoft scooped them up to turn them into a Halo factory. You can see some of the writing on the wall in this Washington Post piece from February 2022 when the acquisition was first made public. Though Bungie employees said leadership has assured them that there will be absolutely no layoffs and nothing major in terms of restructuring once the Sony deal closes, the acquisition represents a notable shift for the Washington-based game developers. For roughly the last 15 years, Bungie's business dealings have been marked by repeated pushes to regain independence, an anomaly in the video game industry. Indeed, after being purchased by Microsoft in 2000, the game developer birthed the Halo franchise before splitting from the tech titan in 2007. In 2019, Bungie reached an agreement with its partner in publishing deal since 2010, Activision Blizzard, to regain control of its publishing rights to Destiny. For a studio that's striven to maintain creative freedom, even while creating big-budget video games, the Sony buyout is a surprising turn, albeit one firmly in step with the industry's pivot towards consolidation. Yeah, it didn't sound like it would go great back then, and sadly, time has borne that out, as it very clearly is not going great now. This is not entirely unexpected either. In fact, this is a process we can follow pretty clearly with many developers post-buyout or post-acquisition. It begins with the major decision-making powers being stripped from the hands of the people it was in prior to the studio losing their independence. If you take the ability to steer the proverbial ship and decide the fate of a company and safeguard the interests of its labor force out of the hands of the people who know it and its employees best and, God forbid, might care, and pass them directly to people whose only relationship with the company or any of its employees is spreadsheets and earning reports, guess what happens? That's right, class. Capitalism capitalisms. Economos hungers. Concerns and metrics like employee satisfaction or happiness or quality of life are slowly replaced, or at the very least deprioritized, in favor of terms right out of the dystopian corporatocracy lexicon like efficiency, profit margins, minimum viable product, and other horrors. Short-term profits raise, while long-term profits and business outlooks, employee morale, and company viability plummet. We watched this happen with Blizzard right after Activision assimilated them and cranked the microtransactions and mobile game dials up to 11. And then after they were bought by Microsoft years later, one of the first things to happen was 1,900 roles were eliminated. We watched it happen with BioWare, as many of their founders and most talented developers fled in droves, and the quality of their games after Mass Effect fell 27 floors into the basement following their acquisition by Electronic Arts for about $1 billion. Remember Rare? Legendary for creating classics like Donkey Kong Country, Killer Instinct, and GoldenEye. And after Microsoft bought them though, not so much. The last thing they did? Sea of Thieves. Ouch. And what about the huge Embracer Group deal? Other than dashing the dreams of Deus Ex fans everywhere, what happened with that? Oh, 5,000 people lost their jobs. That's what happened. Remember Westwood Studios, famed developer of the classic Dune 2 and also the Command & Conquer series, amazing devs. Unfortunately, Electronic Arts also acquired them in 1998 and put an end to all that silly making good games nonsense. They were shut down a few years later. Who else was recently bought that we love? Oh, that's right, Arcane Studios, the Dishonored and Prey guys. And what was the last game they put out? Oh, right, Redfall. And what happened immediately following that? Arcane Austin was shut down. And what happened to Tango Gameworks, the guys who made those dope Evil Within games and Hi-Fi Rush? Oops, they're gone too. Shut down by Microsoft, the company that had just acquired them. I could go on, but I trust my point is made. Acquisition by a significantly larger and more valuable company has more often than not historically been the death knell of far too many legendary studios. And sadly, I think it's Bungie's turn, unfortunately. I mean, shit, nobody can outrun that little Grim Reaper meme forever, right? Alright, so what exactly does the timeline look like? Don't worry, we're gonna lay it out. First, you get bought out. Then typically, but not always, a game or product is rushed to market because, well, the buyers are in a rush to prove to shareholders that their big purchase wasn't a mistake. And they're desperate to regain money as fast as possible. Following that, the layoffs begin, usually regardless of how well the game does. This is because, again, the suits are terrified that their new toy won't immediately put up big numbers in the spreadsheets, so they panic and start axing jobs, even if the new release is selling well, because, well, they need to be sure that they're in the black, otherwise it's their jobs that are on the line. But guys, once the layoffs begin, it's only a matter of time or rounds of layoffs before the talent actually just starts leaving on their own. And once the talent begins to depart, That's when the decay that's set in becomes rot as the value of the studio, or what's left of it, starts to decompose. And once that's begun, that's a wrap. The more the value of the studio rots away, the more diminished their ability to create great games becomes. And as a result, their ability to attract replacement talent is diminished as well. And if they can't replace or replicate the lost talent, the last stop on the descent into irrelevancy in that burning dumpster is becoming a studio or brand in name only. If you're wondering what this looks like in practice, look no further than when Anthem barely managed to drag its pathetic half-living corpse into an early grave, and I said all the way back then, that's a wrap for BioWare. BioWare is now, for all intents and purposes, a studio in name only, and the only reason it's still even that is because EA thinks there's at least a statistically relevant chance that slapping the name BioWare on some rando shit game or failing live service might trick a few thousand customers into buying it. See Dragon Age Veilguard if you have any doubt I'm right about this. So, where are we with Bungie? Just how fucked are they? Well, pretty fucked, unfortunately. We're here at the projects are canceled and talent starts fleeing the sinking ship phase. And that's what brings us to this, the most recent report out of the embattled developers stating that Bungie veterans Luke Smith and Mark Noseworthy have left. This is not just a minor problem, but as we've explained, a huge signaling risk. Initially, it was reported by journalist Jeff Grubb via his podcast that they had been let go, caught in the executive and leadership shakeup. How non-threatening sounding, right? This alone would be bad enough. New leadership, especially of a business or company whose success or failure is largely predicated on the flourishing of their creatives being tone deaf and out of touch enough to simply get rid of what many consider to be top veteran talent, is psychotic at best. To say nothing of the fact that it's like dominoes and starts a chain reaction of people leaving. Just look at Blizzard over the past 10 years. It's a revolving door in that motherfucker. But it gets worse. What could be worse than the new bosses being stupid enough to fire some of the top studio guys? The conditions at the studio already being so bad that the top guys left on their own, following their upcoming project being canceled. Yeah, like I said, guys, it's not bad, it's worse. So that was fun, right? And that about brings us up to speed. Now, let's recap. In 2022, Bungie is acquired not just by some big bad corpo, they were acquired by the big bad corpo, Sony Interactive itself. Since then, we've had no less than 2 very high profile, highly unpopular mass layoffs. Not only were there previous guarantees from Sony that this would not happen, but they ended up accounting for more than 25% of the entire studio. Then, it's revealed that those job cuts had been planned more than half a year ago and were going to happen regardless of whether or not Bungie's latest release, the Destiny 2 expansion, The Final Shape, was a big hit. And for those keeping track, it was a big hit. Now, even more downsizing is occurring, if not in labor, definitely in product output. It's also being reported that Bungie will be stepping back from Destiny 2's big expansion release cycle to instead focus on free-to-play, smaller content packs. Oh boy, we've heard that before, haven't we, guys? Otherwise known as gacha mechanics and microtransactions. Next, Bloomberg reported that an in-development project called Payback, which was to have been a Destiny spin-off, has been canceled following the, quote, departure of the aforementioned Luke Smith and Mark Noseworthy. And finally, the nail in the coffin is the news that Destiny 3, while not yet in development, reports are surfacing that it never will be. The reason I call this the final nail is because it shows not just where Sony's priorities for Bungie are now, it also shows where they're going to be. And those priorities are on moving Destiny 2 to maintenance mode and switching focus to Marathon, an extraction shooter, rather than the single-player space opera in the vein of what that franchise has always been known for, otherwise known as a live service that no one wanted. And if this isn't what it looks like when a major studio is being wound down, packed up, split apart, and slowly reduced to nothing more than a famous name to slap on subpar products, I don't know what the fuck it is. To be clear, once again consulting from the Holy Book of Nuance, this is not what I want it to be. This is not what I'm hoping happens, or even what I think should happen. I'm a fan of Bungie, and I want nothing more than for them to be around successful, making great games for as long as possible. But, geez. We're the fairest show in America. It's my job to report, explain, and analyze the news, and tell you what I think is going on. And this is what I think is going on. Bungie is going down. I, of course, don't mean that I expect Bungie to actually, literally, publicly be shut down anytime soon. Its name is still worth far too much for that. But they're not going to be retired and relegated to a place of honor in gaming history with some semblance of dignity. This is Not a happy ending. Instead, their cruelly abused corpse will be puppeteered around by rapacious corpos who think there's still some chance they can make a few bucks off the Bungie name before it completely gives up the ghost. Occasionally, we'll probably see some third-string bullshit with the Bungie name slapped on it. You know, they're gonna ride Marathon out into the ground for as long as they can. But otherwise, it's just gonna be third-string bargain bin shovelware slop that Sony thinks needs the Bungie name in order to sell. And they're gonna be running around like, oh no, Bungie's still here, guys, they're still great. We promise the name can still sell you stuff. I mean, the brand still has value. I mean, please buy anything we try to sell you with the Bungie name on it. We need the easy money. Basically, when you get right down to it, I think Sony realizes they paid too much for Bungie, and in typical suit fashion, they're panicking and trying to recoup in the dumbest, most short-sighted yet predictable way possible. Downsize, lay off, cancel, and consolidate. I desperately hope I'm wrong, Jeeves, but I gotta say it. I think Bungie's dead.
Quick compression for you. Caw, bang, fuck, I'm dead!
Okay, that's our show. Thanks so much for chilling tonight, spending this little bit of your free time with us. We love you today. We love you all the way. Sorry, this has been kind of a bummer episode, but shit, we gotta cover what's going on. I don't make the news. If I did, you can bet there would be far more blunts and boomer shooters to talk about. But what do you guys think? Am I tripping here? Is Bungie gonna be totally fine? Am I a retard who's overreacting? Let me know in the comments down below, and we will catch everybody next week for more blunts, Bungie, and bummers.
Yup, woke up, smoke up, blunt, then I pass out. Pass out. Huh? Woke up, what up, smoke up, blunt, then I'm back down. Back down. What? Yup, woke up, smoke up, blunt, then I pass out. Pass out. Huh? Woke up, what up, smoke up, blunt, then